about libido. Where does it go and why does it seem to ghost us when we need it the most? What's happening out there?
Endocrinology is absolutely sometimes the worst. Thyroid gets blown off, hormones get blown off. Yeah. We just have to own our bodies, right?
Welcome back to the Hot Flash Health Podcast, where we're dishing out unfiltered truths about menopause with a side of sass and a sprinkle of crass. Get ready to dive into the wild world of hot flashes, mood swings, and all the other joys of being a queenager. This ain't your grandma's podcast. We're here to chat about our bodies, our passions, our fears, and desires, all while navigating that roller coaster ride of menopause. So grab a glass of wine, tequila, water, whatever, sit back, and let's ride this hot flash wave together. I'm Courtney Mamusha, and alongside me is my fabulous co-host, Dawn Fable. We're just two outspoken gals who aren't afraid to say it like it is. Now let's kick off today's episode with an amazing guest. Dawn, why don't you go ahead and introduce her?
We're so glad to have you back. Welcome back to Hot Flash Health, Dr. Julie. We are thrilled to have the fabulous Dr. Julie Markiel from Ascent Health Center. Julie is a powerhouse, and she also happens to be super smart with a background from Princeton, a chiropractic degree, and a mission to tackle everything from pain to allergies to hormonal balance and that lovely thing called chronic unwellness that so many of us are struggling with. You know, the fatigue, inflammation, and all those fun surprises that we as women are experiencing. But today we've got something a little bit more, let's say, spicy. We all showed up today looking like vaginas. We love our pink sweaters. Yep, we are talking about our libido, ladies. At this age, we like to keep the slip and slide open, if you know what I mean, but it isn't always easy. So Dr. Julie is here to give us the scoop about what happens to our bodies, where our mojo is sneaking off to, and how we can get it back. Quick fixes, trending tricks, hormones, and so on. So buckle up and get ready to laugh, learn, and maybe blush a little because this episode is going to be super juicy.
Thank you. Great to be here. It's always so much fun. I think I laugh more than I talk.
Well, that's how we want it. That's how we want it. And what a laughing subject. Not really, but let's talk about libido. Where does it go and why does it seem to ghost us when we need it the most? What's happening out there?
You know, it was probably over 2.5 or 3 years ago. And I'm probably the oldest on here, but it was a hormone seminar. And this doctor was 72 years old. She looked fantastic. Her muscles, she takes her shirt off. I've seen her speak a number of times now. And she shows her muscles in her body, and she just went off about libido and how it's missing. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is a huge problem. If this 70-year-old doctor saying, hey guys, wake up in this audience, I thought, this is really something in the 40s we need to start talking about. One of the biggest things is, we take care of everybody else, we go hard, and if we start thinking about the endocrine piece, meaning how your body is responding to it. So not just the mind piece, but when we look at the body, we look at the organ systems and nutrition, we look at the emotional piece, and then we look at the structural piece, because all of those pieces matter for libido. I think today we're going to spend some time on that nutritional kind of side of things and lab work. But all those pieces matter. And I think as women, I see it in men too. It just disappears when we don't take time to care for our own self. As that happens, hormones change, cortisol changes, liver health changes, and then it's just this snowball of confusion. So
it's happening to all of us. You know, I feel like anytime I'm with a group of girlfriends over wine or having dinner, even playing tennis, you know, that's a prominent subject. And I think I feel really inspired, and I feel like we're getting to a better place with people being more vulnerable and honest about it. And thankfully, doctors and physicians and experts like you are popping up and helping us provide solutions. But what exactly happens to us as women as sort of the where did my mojo go phase? And is it just me? Is it just women at this time in our lives? Or is the universe really trying to turn the heat up on this struggle as if we haven't gone through enough with, all of the struggles that we have?
Right. I mean, John, we're not only losing our keys, we're losing our libido. What the fuck?
And we're losing our fucking minds.
Totally.
Our bodies are falling apart. I mean, I told Courtney this morning. She was like, hey, how's your day? And I'm like, my day sucks. I'm like, I was awoken by the worst possible noise in the entire world, which she guessed it. It's a dog throwing up. There is no worse noise than that. And then to make things worse, I bent over to pick it up and I threw out my back.
Oh.
So anyway, not to digress, but Julie, Dr. Julie, what happens to us as women? Where does our mojo go?
An interesting way to start this conversation, because as estrogen changes, it changes ligament stability. So I remember back when I was first starting to practice 30 years ago, I would meet with this pharmacist from a compounding pharmacy who was about 65, and I was 27 or 30. And she would tell me, these are the things you're going to see as your practice develops and you start to have a different demographic, which is more my age. And she said, women are going to come in with horrible low back pain because estrogen causes ligaments to have different stretch and response. And so it does the same thing in the vagina. And so we lose laxity in ligaments and all this back pain. And if you started asking around in your women group, I bet you most of them would say, this back pain, it's new and it's terrible. Well, that same elasticity is being lost. So some of libido lost, just that it's like, well, this isn't fun. I don't have orgasms. They aren't happening like they used to. So what's the point of trying to get all worked up for this event that has no roller coaster at the top sensation? So estrogen is definitely a piece of it. And for so long, unfortunately, there was a myth around estrogen that estrogen caused cancer. Well, what they've discovered now through the research is that was erroneous, completely erroneous. And I gave a lecture 25 years ago, and I remember I was so young, and I did it to a group of OBGYNs. And I thought, oh, it was that research at that point showed estrogen given with progesterone has basically minimal risk, if any at all. And this was almost before we were testing for the BRCA gene and everything. So we really got I don't know how many bad words I can say, but we really got screwed out of opportunity to maintain our hormones correctly as they were changing, because they were educating the general female population incorrectly. Being an alternative medicine pretty much my whole life since the beginning, we know that the whole endocrine system is what your brain tells your body to do, what your thyroid furnace does, what your adrenals do for stress and how cortisol responds, and then what really happens in the ovaries. And as we make estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, we can't get to the day where it's like, oh, all the estrogen's gone, so now let's start putting it back. We really need to start in the late 30s and early 40s, restoring the system and giving the system support all the way through, so that it isn't like stepping off the edge of a cliff in the ocean and all of a sudden you're underwater. So it's balance, it's estrogen, say deficiency, but in all honesty, estrogen deficiency and estrogen excess have the same symptoms. And that's what makes it so difficult to just go to a doctor and ask them to put you on hormones. If that isn't what they specialize in, and they aren't looking at all these pieces of how estrogen is processed through the body, you could get estrogen or these pellets which I am not a fan of as a doctor. These pellets are crazy because you put them in. If they work, you're lucky. Hit the jackpot. If they don't, testosterone pellets can do something called aromatize and become more estrogen. So you feel great for a short time. You're like, oh my God, my libido is so insane. I can fuck everyone. Then all of a sudden, you've got nothing. Because it hasn't stayed in that testosterone pathway. And now you've got high estrogen, and you may not even be taking it, low testosterone again, no idea where progesterone is. And so you go back and they put a little higher dose of pellets in. And it's like, yeah, but it's not the same as it was because they haven't looked at that picture. So there's really new standards of care. And we've done a lot of work with a medical doctor. Her name's Pam Smith, who's really rolling out education the way it should be rolled out. So we've done a lot of work with her about how do you really assess the level of hormones are in your body. That's the range of the best hormones, both subjectively, what you're telling us as doctors, and objectively, what you're feeling on your own end. That takes the right knowledge, not just like, hey, I'm going to write this up and come back, hope you don't have vaginal dryness anymore and your back doesn't hurt. That's what we're looking at.
I think there's several issues on what you just said, right? I mean, we've seen this with the new documentary that has come out around menopause. It is very clear that your traditional OBGYN physicians have had very little training and time spent around menopause or sort of the hormonal imbalances. So you mix that with, the Women's Health Initiative, which has created all these misconceptions around HRT. And given the fact that our society is so litigious, right? Everyone's so afraid that they're going to get screwed. I mean, you've created this perfect storm of not being able to help women how we deserve to be helped. You wonder why so many people are frustrated because they're feeling dismissed. So kudos to you. So interesting about the pellets, because I've had girlfriends who are on those and they're like having sex with their scene on their high-waisted jeans, I mean, they're like humping the walls. They can't get enough of it. And then, you're telling me that if you have too much of this, you're going to lose that libido longer term. And you might come out of the whole situation with like a full ass beard, right? I mean, as if we need any more facial hair.
No, totally. No more. What I would love to talk about, and I'm fortunate to have you as a doctor, so you're my doctor, partner in medical everythingness, but somebody coming into you and saying, I'm struggling with my libido, I've got a dry vagina, my sex drive is gone, I can't orgasm. How do you approach that? Like, what are the steps you might take? Is it blood work first? Kind of walk me through how you would approach a new client who has some of these issues.
My approach, kind of personality approach, I definitely start clinically because I think that makes people feel the most safe. So start clinically with evidence-based information. So we'll run a really thorough blood panel. Then the standard of care now actually says the best way to measure hormones is through salivary. So it's a saliva hormone test. And there was tons of their salivary and urinary, and there still is controversy around it. But it's very interesting because LabCorp and Quest have been running cortisols, salivary and urinary for a long time. Won't run hormones. And they say it's not valid data. Well, research has been done now and validated. Salivary hormone testing gives us the most stable answers. Start with a really good blood panel, and then we would do a salivary panel and get information. Now, because we're all unique, what works for you or may not work for each of you or for each of us. So we definitely take each case individually. There are some odd parameters where, for the most part, these dosings are going to work. When we start with that lab work, we get it back and then we have some information. So we get that information back and we can say, okay, we're going to see, is the liver clearing out estrogen? That's one of the most important things. There's 3 pathways that estrogens clear out. And if you put people on hormones, but you are not looking at your elimination detoxification pathways, that's when you build up estradiol, which is the most common one. And that's what you'll see in birth control pills and mostly on your patch and different things. But estradiol, although the best, is also the one that can potentially cause the highest risk if not managed correctly. So we got to look at those detox pathways. And I'm sure I'll just say some words, like hot words that people say are methylation, that MTHFR, everybody's kind of looking at that motherfucker gene. It's not one thing. Like, you got to take that information along with your liver health and your gut health and say, okay, what's happening here? Look at that. And we would start the natural hormone therapy. What I want to clarify is because it's a topic, it's becoming very confusing. Some groups are very, kind of like what you said at the beginning, militant, and they just hate everything that's outside of their little realm. They're calling it MHRT, or MRT, menopause replacement therapy. That group says, hey, wait till you feel super shitty and let's do some menopause replacement therapy. They don't feel that you need it before then. Then there's a group that is still calling it BHRT, which is bioidentical hormone therapy. That's what we do. And then, I don't know, there's HRT, I guess, hormone replacement therapy. So hormone replacement therapy would be natural or not natural. So if your doctor were saying, hey, we do HRT at our clinic, they could be doing bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, BHRT, or they could be doing prescription over-the-counter hormone replacement therapy.
So, Dr. Julie, let me interrupt you really quickly because there's so much information out there, and I think it's really important. I even get confused, and Courtney and I run a podcast on this stuff. We hear this stuff all the time. What is the difference, advantages, disadvantages of bioidentical hormone therapy versus the others?
So the way I explain it is exactly like we explain thyroid. Keys, you know how a key can fit in a lock, but it won't turn it to open the door? So if you're doing HRT, non-bioidentical, your key is going to fit. And it might jiggle the lock, and it might knock some things loose, so you feel a little better, at least in your head, maybe even placebo, you're thinking you're feeling better, but it never opens the door. It absolutely cannot. And so BHRT, in the lock, turns the key, opens the door, and the body says, oh, I know what you're doing for me, and I can utilize this and put it into the biochemistry and know where to take it. It's easier to detox those things out because they're not foreign toxins. They're identical to how your body would be making it. So I definitely fall into the BHRT, and that's all we will do. And so those have to come from a compounding pharmacy. So the downsides of the compounding pharmacy are most of it is an out-of-pocket expense. It's not a very expensive expense. About with testing, so let's say not with testing. Testing, it's like less than $100 a month. I mean, you would spend that on coffee or supplements that you might not need. And so for about $100 or less a month, you will get a good place who's doing it right, bioidentical hormones that would be either estrogen, testosterone, DHE and pregnenolone, and progesterone. So you're getting them all. That's what I would say it should be about. If you're paying $200, that's a lot, but maybe that place was doing something with testing or who knows. But that's about what you could expect. So it's not unreasonable, but it is definitely not $5. It's out of pocket and not covered by insurance.
You know, I hate to get on my soapbox here, but I'm sure both you ladies feel the same. I recently read an article that the Department of Defense spends around, I think it was like $80 million on erectile dysfunction drugs like a Viagra, right?
Gosh.
This subject makes me so angry in that men, because their penises are falling down, have insurance covering this type of thing. Yet women who are losing their libido have to pay out of pocket. I mean, there's plenty of women in the military. Why isn't the Department of Defense spending money on HRT?
Stella getting her groove back.
I think even more angering, they will pay, even if they're going to pay for anything like estrogen, absolutely will not ever cover testosterone for women.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy. Yeah.
Is infuriating. And thank you for that clarification, because I think, again, that's sort of the challenge is there, you've got these teeny bopper, TikTok influencers that are talking about, menopause when they're a far cry likely from it. And then you've got all these drug companies that are trying to push information down your throat. And then you have every Tom, Dick, and Harry. I mean, menopause is certainly having its moment right now. You have all these other people who are positioning themselves as menopause experts, trying to capitalize really on the moment that menopause is having right now. It's interesting because, again, I look back at my sort of core girlfriends as really our focus group. And so many of us women are trying to find our libidos, trying to get our groove back in the bedroom. And I laugh because a lot of my girlfriends are reading this fairy porn, right? Not sure if you've heard about that, the Thorn of Roses. I mean, that has completely mind-boggling to me that grown-ass suburban housewives are reading books on fairies having sex with one another that is literally igniting their bedroom. Yeah. I mean, it is a real thing. But aside from the fairy porn books,
I don't have them in my house, but apparently I need them.
Oh my gosh, you guys. I mean, they are everywhere. It is bananas.
You showed me on Tuesday night. You were like, look at these books. I'm like, okay, I don't read. Do they have them on audio with like porn sounds?
Yeah, so it is a series of books. The author is Sarah Mass, and it starts with A Court of Thorns and Roses. I mean, you again, like suburban women are just going bonkers for these books. But aside from the fairy porn, I've yet to get into the fairy porn. Maybe we should do a Hot Flash Health book club. P.S. They're not real fairies. They're not like little fairies, like flying around. These are like men fairies that are like Fabio or maybe like a Harlequin love novel. And it is really, really sexual writing from what I understand. So you're welcome, ladies.
I did read, what were the ones like about 10 or 12 years ago? There was
Grey, Christian Grey.
I did read those.
Yeah, those were good.
I think this takes it to the whole next level. But
okay.
Anyway, aside from the fairy porn on our nightstand and, our self-pleasure toys that we may enjoy every once in a while, what are some recommendations that you can give to us women, or any trending techniques that you see out there to get our sexy back? I mean, are there any that actually work, or is it all just a marketing ploy and fairy dust where we, are left libidoless?
Well, it's interesting what you said about sexual toys, because if those give you more pleasure than your partner, that an emotional connection. Or maybe it's a disconnection. Maybe it's like, how much do we cuss on this?
A lot.
A fucking lot.
To like fuck the shit out of me. I don't want to like pretend like I have to have this big romance. I just want somebody that's like, so is it part of that? Because if you're having an orgasm with your toys, it's there. It exists. So what's that disconnect with that person that you're in the relationship with? I mean, also there's a lot of single women that get divorced now around our age, maybe in that 10-year gap. let me tell you what, they're getting laid all the time. So this action, part of the biggest thing is that how do we reignite that? The harder part of this piece, for sure. The clinical piece, the structural piece, those are clinically absolutely doable. Like different physical therapy things. That little guy, that little key, you can't buy one, you can't create one. That's the hardest part.
I think and that's hard too. And I think about emotions, right? Where, you're having struggles in the bedroom or your marriage or whatever, and how us as women take those emotions so personally, where we feel like something's wrong with us. And I'm sure many women out there are like, okay, like my vagina's dry and I'm not enjoying sex, like something's wrong with me. So those emotions that we go through, like again, the emotional roller coaster, are so hard. And I don't know if I know you do like the neurofeedback with me and tapping and, try and calm my central nervous system down because it's all whacked. But do you have any tips for women and how we approach things with like taking less ownership, like this is my fault, to like understanding that sure, it's frustrating, but there's a reason for this. It could be your hormones. Like here's why you need to look at certain things and how to approach it.
I think what you all are doing is probably one of the best things that exists, because it's putting it out there and it's saying you're not alone. You're not alone in this. I hear this all the time in my office, and just sharing that in a way that says, listen, you're not standing on this island by yourself. I always love, what did Julia Roberts say in that Italian one? They were eating the pizza. The girl
Mystic pizza.
No, it was skinny or whatever, but they're eating pizza in Napoli. And the Italian girl goes, oh my gosh, I can't eat any more pizza. And Julia Roberts says, like, why? She said, oh, my pants are so tight, I have to unbutton them. And she said, has any man ever said, you know what? You took your clothes off. Just go ahead and hit the road. She's like, they're never going to say that. We just have to own our bodies, right? She was just like, nobody's ever, you're naked in their room. They're not going to be like, right?
Too much pizza.
We're so hard on ourselves about so many things. And I hate Instagram and TikTok. It gets to me. How is it not getting to the and below female crowd, right? I mean, it gets in my head. I see the girls, they're so perfect and they're influencers, and it's terrible.
I feel like we as a society are getting a little better. Court, was it you and I who were talking about the Victoria's Secret fashion show and how they were really rocking,
more inclusive,
rounder bodies and things. But then, of course, you have the, wild ride of Ozempic and all the semaglutides where half of us, including myself, are walking around, pricking ourselves with semaglutide.
I really don't think those are bad. And from over the last 4 years of really incorporating it to a practice that I had to understand how it worked, make sure it was safe, has changed, not because maybe we're thinner and it's created the perfect body, because it's still eating right and exercising and doing those things, but it has created a freedom, incredible freedom around, I feel good about me. And that me could be 15 pounds or 20 pounds heavier than I am, but that woman feels good about her. And so in a way, I've really seen that as promoting a freedom of body appreciation more than anorexia of any type thing. It's been phenomenal for women.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful than a woman being able to own her confidence and maybe stand up a little prouder. And so I appreciate your advocacy for that. I mean, our listeners know that Courtney and I are huge fans of semaglutide, and we will own it all day long.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I need more, Julie.
Done well. Okay.
I have to tell, while we're on this subject of, sex and tips and tricks of what we can do in the bedroom and all of those sorts of things, I had the funniest thing happen to me gosh, this was months ago. Courtney knows this. I have a little, secret stash of my toys that I'll bring out on occasion. And somehow, some way, my son found them. My middle 10-year-old son found them. And they were hidden away. And so how he found them, I'm not really sure. But my wonderful, beautiful 70-year-old mother babysits my kids after school. And so my son got into my toy stash. And thank goodness my husband was there, because he pulled them out and he said, "Daddy, what are these?" And thankfully, my husband thought really quickly on his feet and he said, "Oh, those are mommy's hand massagers." And so this sweet son of mine walked out to the living room and said to my mom, "Gigi, look what I found. I'd like to give you a hand massage." My mom didn't have the heart to tell him no. So she literally sat there with her hands out. My son was giving her a hand massage. And
I think your mom's lost her libido for sure.
Oh my gosh. So I called my mom the next day. She's my best friend. And I called her the next day and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Mom, you'll never believe it. I'm like, Pierce got into my, toys. He found them." And she was so disgusted. She was like, "Yeah, I know." She was like, "I got hand massages from him all afternoon from them."
Hopefully she's like, "Let's wash these before."
I'm sorry.
Dying. I mean, dying. And he's the sweetest boy. He's my sweetest. And he literally, like, out of the goodness of his heart was like, "Gigi, I know sometimes you have arthritis in your hands. Like, give me a hand massage."
Don't you love the innocence, though? The innocence is nice. Realize there's still that innocence at age 10. Thank goodness.
Yep. Until, at his college, mom's weekend, I'm telling all of his buds that.
Well, Julie, I know you have so much knowledge in there, and we definitely want to have you back for different segments. And to kind of wrap up with today, you were kind of mentioning you have a new program that you're launching or working with through Menopause. Can you talk to our audience about that and how people can get a hold of you? I mean, I have her on speed dial, but whatever.
Oh, it's libido-restore.com, and we're going to start. We're launching next week, and we've put it into organized sort of approaches. Those 3 approaches are always how I look at the body: structural, nutritional, organ systems, and then emotional. And we're going to take all 3 of those pieces and just go through steps or information to provide the audience out there that you're reaching with the opportunity to have, if nothing else, to just have more knowledge for their own selves, and to demystify some of what's out there. So my office, thank you, Court, is 303-343-8800. And I'm there all the time, like today on this snowy day. And I love it. So I love answering questions. I love being available. So thank you. So fun. It is always so fun. Yeah.
Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for seeing us as women, as we go through this emotional and hormonal and sexual, spiritual roller coaster, because it is a wild fucking ride.
It's hard to be a woman and feel very isolated. And I have found with Julie on my side, I definitely have a partner who is an advocate for my health and looking at things on the inside out and not just a quick fix. And so I can't thank you enough, Dr. Julie at Ascent Health Center, for helping me get, 25 pounds lighter in my old groove back. I mean, I'm still working on some groove things. But.
For, like, as someone who is your friend and has seen you in darker days, and seen you when you're not feeling optimal in your health, you really have. And thank you, Dr. Julie, because Courtney is such a bright light. And so you have helped very much, I think, that light shine a little bit brighter when it's been dim. So
I'm going to cry.
The greatest thing that she's done is her friends that, hey, this worked. And so that's given me the opportunity to also grow and learn, because I learned something from everybody that she's referred, which is like gazillions. This woman is a referral machine.
And we hope that Hot Flash Health continues to help build that business, because it's important for women in our community to feel heard and seen and empowered, and not just settle for mediocrity, because I think that that's what's doing. And there is a real power in knowledge and looking from the inside in and doing some of that, blood work and testings. We ask so kindly and so humbly for all of you, our listeners, to subscribe, to like, to share, to think of Hot Flash Health as a resource in a community and as a family, to laugh and to cry, and share this with your friends, please. We are doing this out of the kindness of our hearts because it fills each one of our buckets. And we believe that women deserve to feel heard and seen like Dr. Julie has done. So thank you. And please subscribe.
Thanks, guys. Well, I'll say that's a wrap on today's episode. Remember, menopause may be a wild ride, but together we've got this. So as Dawn mentioned, please follow us at Hot Flash Health and subscribe to us and listen anytime. Until next time, keep those hot flashes in check, y'all. Bye.